Hello, how's it going for you? I hope well. I know I'm enjoying this, and we're talking now about Module 1. So I wanted to give you a brief overview of some of the items that will occur during this module experience in this course of communicating with people with disabilities. I'm Dave Lucas, your learning engineer for this experience, and I hope that you've been able to think and ponder some of the responsibilities we have as a communicator. Whether we're able-bodied or whether we're a person with disabilities, it's very important for us to learn how to communicate with people who have disabilities. I wanted to say also as we begin that this course goes beyond any sort of legal ramifications of disabilities. So when we're doing this course, remember that it will be up to you as a person in an organization or in your job as a law officer or whatever you decide to do in your career or continue in your career. You have to check the legal requirements, not only of the federal laws, but also the state level. This course is all about our communication responsibilities. And there's not a whole lot of laws about that other than the ethical and the kind of dignity that we need to treat people. Today I want to talk about the value of disability. And that may surprise you. And if you are a person with a disability, you may say, wait a minute, what are you talking about? But we're going to learn in this module that there are some real values to disabilities. First of all, sometimes persons with a disability, say for example a person who's blind or a person who can't hear, a person who's blind develop acute hearing often. A person who's hard of hearing or cannot hear often develop acute sight. There seems to be a bodily reaction, a way in which the body makes up for a loss of a limb or of sight and so forth. So it's very important to remember that that could be a value to that person. More importantly, I think that it brings a kind of character to people with disabilities that sometimes we don't have. I have a good friend at Ohio University that teaches at the Athens campus, J.W. Smith, and he's my hero because J.D. is blind, J.W. is blind, and yet he has a doctorate. I barely got my doctorate. And I can't imagine the kind of trials he went through to do that. And yet he has a wonderful attitude and is a powerful instructor and has been a good friend. So I think some of these kinds of things we need to be thinking about. I also remember as a boy being with my dad going up to the old hardware store in our town. And in there was a young man named Gerald. He was totally paralyzed. He could only move his head and a little bit of his neck, one arm, and the rest of his body was totally paralyzed. And yet his mother and father, who owned the hardware store, took him faithfully into the hardware store every day and laid him out on a cot. He stayed there the entire day with them as they ran the hardware store and as they met their customers. I remember riding up there on my bicycle alone, going into the hardware store, and the first greeting that you ever got was from Gerald. Now, of course, his mother was busy with nails and screws and putting things out. The dad was in the back bringing in the sacks or sorting things out in the warehouse. But it was always Gerald who greeted everyone who came into that hardware store. And I remember the day that Progress shut them down and they had to close the old hardware store. I remember that everyone in town talked about how they would miss the greetings from Gerald. It wasn't necessarily all that stuff in the hardware store they were going to miss, although I'm sure they didn't want to have to drive 12 or 15 miles now to the nearest larger, bigger, progressive hardware store. But it was that human touch. It was that friendship. It was that warm greeting that Gerald always gave everyone, regardless as to their background. There was real value in that. We're going to find that whatever organization you're in, that the idea of value and honor and strength of character and person comes from every person that we meet and that we have in our organization or on our team. And we're going to learn that here. Especially you want to think about the 10 commandments of treating people and communicating people with disabilities. We'll go over them real quickly. Treat people like adults. Speak to someone, any person who has a disability, not to someone around them, not to their caregiver, not to this person who may be with them. Use language that is concrete. Don't speak in metaphors or in generalities. Always be careful around people with disabilities. Don't pretend you understand if you don't understand. Just be open and honest and smile and say, I don't understand. Always treat people like people. That's going to be the whole gist of this Module 1. So enjoy as you watch the videos. Think about the 10 Commandments as we give them in the blackboard. And remember, every person with a disability, or if they're able-bodied, has honor and value to us as we communicate. Keep working.